Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to Where's the Bus, the rural transportation crisis in BC. I'm Guy Dauncey, a long-time climate organiser. This event has been organised by the newly formed Public Transit Alliance of BC and its member groups all across British Columbia. So I'd like to invite Tara Shostarian to offer our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Guy, and I'm so honored to have the responsibility to do the land acknowledgement as a South Asian guest settler on the beautiful unceded traditional territories of the Hunkaminam and Squamish-speaking peoples, the Musqueam, the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Coquitlam nations here in Burnaby. Before I go ahead, I would just like to wish everyone a happy Indigenous Peoples Day. And whether we were able to enjoy the festivities or we held the commemoration in our hearts, I think it's a wonderful form of allyship, considering, in our day and age of residential school denialism. So thank you for hearing me out. Okay, so tonight we will be talking about public transportation. But to orient ourselves a little, I want to remind everyone of what it has meant for millennia to move, travel, and exist on the lands we colonially refer to as British Columbia. The expansion of colonialism into BC followed the trade routes of Indigenous peoples along rivers, through valleys, and overpasses, places where Indigenous people lived and thrived. For instance, the Sills people have sophisticated and highly intricate travel routes that are deeply connected to the surrounding land and waterways. Their migration routes allowed them to hunt and harvest with the seasons, something which many semi nomadic people groups across Turtle Island have always done. However, Indigenous peoples were increasingly inhibited from using their routes, and especially so when the pass system was enacted in the late 1800s. As a policy, this system sought to control and limit movement to and from colonially built reserves. These traditional routes of trade, travel, migration, and communication are stolen to make land for modern transportation corridors, with land taken over to expand towns, cities, railways and roads, forestry, clear cuts, as we all know, pipelines, and hydro towers. All a living reminder of this province's colonial past and ongoing present. In the 1960s and even before that, routes were used to transport Indigenous children kidnapped from their homes to far distances to different residential schools in different provinces, where many children died and never returned. We also have to remember the 60s scoop, where children were taken away to be settled with settler colonial parents. Today, insufficient public transportation perpetuates violence against women, specifically Indigenous women, due to increases in hitchhiking and other dangerous forms of mobility. We see this clearly in what is known as the Highway of Tears, a route extending from Prince George to Prince Rupert, named to expose the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous girls, women, men, and Two Spirit people. These are just a small handful of examples of how this province has used and continues to use tools of settler colonialism on these stolen lands. In the Public Transit Alliance of BC, as we take on new projects, we strive to learn, understand, and remember this, and to work with BC First Nations as we walk together and paddle in the same direction towards the path of reconciliation. Thanks, and over to you, Guy.
Thank you, Tara, so much. So I invite you all to introduce yourselves in the chat. Say a mention of where you're living and working, get a sense of our geographic reach around the province. And before we get going, I want to give you a quick sense of what's coming up. I got a slide, I believe, that shows there we go. So we got Mary TG, I don't believe is with us, but if she comes later, we'll invite her in. Tanya Wigwitz and then Shilpa Panika, and then questions for them, and personal from Radon Rossi, from Jeremy Valeriotti, then breakout groups, then Chris Alemany, Steve Earle from Gabriola. Come on, stay where you are. What's and Marcia now. So there we go. I'm going to stop sharing before it misbehaves on me anymore. Right, wretched. There we go. So I think Mary TG is not with us. So I want to introduce Tanya Wegwitz and Shilpa Panika. Tanya is a senior transportation planner with 25 years of experience in sustainable transportation and planning. Previously, she was a manager with the Watt Consulting Group, responsible for all transit planning and implementation for the 54 transit systems in BC that are outside of Metro Vancouver. Her projects have spanned everything from transit planning and operation to infrastructure design and governance, and she's undertaken a wide range of projects supporting transportation options to smaller towns, Indigenous communities, and rural areas. Shilpa is the Transit and South Coast team lead in Watt Consulting Group. She's extensive experience in transit planning and project management and has worked in the public sector during her time with Translink. So welcome, Tanya and Shilpa. Hand the floor over to you, right?
Thank you so much, Guy. And just want to make sure that you can hear me okay?
Yes, your sound is coming through. We haven't got your right slides yet, but you're getting there.
Are they showing now?
No, we're just getting join the meeting.
Okay, 1 second.
I know we had them before.
Do
you want me to put it up, Tanya?
Sure, if you want to share, Shilpa.
Sure.
So we're seeing Sandra Hartline's screen for some reason.
Yeah.
That's not right. Sandra, can you stop sharing? That shouldn't be happening. That's what the problem is. Calling
Let me try.
No, okay. Let me have a look what's happening now.
Okay.
Yes, there we go.
There you
go.
Okay.
Yay.
Tanya's screen.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. On behalf of, thank you so much as well for the introduction, Guy. And because of today and where you're starting from, I thought I'd harken back a little bit because I realized that this summer is 10 years since the massive planning engagement process that both Shilpa and I were part of to get transit on the Highway of Tears. So that was a huge project, involved so many people, over 25 different communities, Indigenous communities, municipalities, and so forth. That Shilpa in that picture there, standing outside the Pacific Northern Exhibition in Prince George. And so I thought, adding on to what Guy said about us, we've had the opportunity to work with so many communities and be part of so many projects. And it's always so lovely to be able to speak with others and figure out how we move forward in action, because that's what we care about. And also to say that Highway 16 was something that absolutely did result in change. There are buses on much of that route now, plus many other projects and programs that are in place to help support mobility. And so always in transit, you're never done, and we keep moving forward, and lovely to be moving here forward with you. The other things that Guy had asked us to speak about today is transit planning fundamentals. Just thought whenever we get a chance to just share what we do, Shilpa and I, write us, we'll give you a certificate after you sit through, a couple minutes of these slides in terms of what are the key things that we always wish that folks kind of understood about transit planning, which hopefully then can help you be that much more better advocates in your own communities and able to get what you want out of public transportation. And I'm going to use public transportation wherever I can, just because I find that can be more inclusive, especially when we are talking about rural areas, smaller communities, Indigenous communities, where sometimes when you say transit, people picture a very large bus, but there's actually many different types of ways to get around.
Tanya, can I chip in? There's one request for you to speak a bit louder.
Okay, sounds good.
It's fine to me, but a bit louder is good.
Okay, is that better?
Yes, good.
Okay, I let others know that I was hoping to do this from inside a high school where I take a course this evening. It didn't quite work out that way, so I'll try and yell. Okay. And then finally, just Guy had also asked me the thought-provoking question, oh, yeah, if I had a magic wand and 3 wishes, what would they be? So we'll end on that. And Shilpa, please chime in as you can, and then both of us are here for questions. So first thing that I always want to start with is a transit system is a system. It seems simple, but so often we forget about it. So no one would ever walk through old growth forest and say, ugh, it's such a mess. These ferns are getting in my way, these rotted logs, right? You understand that is the diversity of that ecosystem, which makes it resilient, it makes it healthy, and makes it function. That is what drives that ecosystem. Transit systems are no different. So when we think about transit systems, it is absolutely that diversity in terms of the services they are offered and the people that they are serving and how they work together that helps make mobility function. So I've put a slide up here of the Kelowna transit system just to show you that in terms of how those different services work together in layers. You've got their rapid bus, which is the orange line that you see on the screen, connecting the most important destinations across their entire region. You've got blue frequent transit lines that are then the next level down in that hierarchy or the understory in terms of getting people to go to where they need to go along major corridors. And then you've got a bunch of local routes that are all shown in gray. When we think about intercity and rural connections, the same thing is true. I've put a visual up that actually the Northern Development Initiative Trust, which is a group that we work with, showing many of their systems and services and how they fit together, as well as other services in Northern BC. And again, if you look at it in this way and see the overlaps and see what's going on there, it can look a little bit confusing or overwhelming. But when you drill down into the types of services that are there, each one is doing specific things to serve communities. So at the one scale, you've got regional services. So those services between 30 to 60 kilometers. And what that's trying to do is it's trying to connect people often either within slightly larger centers or communities outside of those larger centers into the nearest larger town or city for same-day return, whether that be access to healthcare or to services, to shopping, to recreation, in some cases as well to jobs and commuters. That is the first level at which communities are connecting in. You then have interregional services, which are crossing boundaries of regional districts, and again, trying to connect people. Often those are also for same-day return. And then what you have is your long-haul intercity services. Those are the really far ones that are trying to take people longer distances, often not for same-day return. And that distinction is useful. So when we were working on the Highway 16 intercommunity transit project, people who were further away, the problem said, well, why don't you just run a bus from Prince Rupert to Prince George? Problem solved. What actually was happening when you listen to the diversity of people's needs is that there was a huge amount of need for people to access services in the town 2 towns over, right? And get back in the same day, not necessarily those longer trips. And if you only focused on those longer trips, it's actually harder to meet those specific needs. The other thing to just keep in mind is that transit speaks in the language of priorities. So I was a transit planner. I can tell you that all your transits in the province and all the different services, it's a little bit like cat's cradle in that you see trips going by, but they're actually all connected together. So by focusing on the priorities of what you want to serve and when you want to serve them, rather than saying it's all wrong or we need everything, the more that communities and groups can be specific in terms of what those highest priorities and needs are, whether it be at specific trips and people.
Where did that come from?
Yeah. What you can do is you can help your advocacy goes further because you can dial in and you can help make those decisions happen in terms of, okay, how do you make as much service happen to the key priorities that you've identified? And often I will say, it's actually been 31 years now that I've been working on community transit. Too often people jump to solutions, right? They're just like, oh, well, we need a bus, or we need a ferry, or what have you, which is lovely. And if you took a step back and started to think about, well, what is there? What community resources are there that can leverage for transportation? Who are we trying to serve? And are there economic development dimensions to what we're trying to achieve? And how else might we layer on or connect to existing services that are there? That's even better. So some thoughts in terms of my recommendations. So these are my 3 wishes that Guy said I had tonight. So one thing, how might we move forward if based on what I've seen? Platform and promotion. So you have all that diversity. The thing that's missing, the first thing, is just being able to promote what is there. That is the first thing, because so many people, especially in some areas of the province, aren't aware of all the different transportation options that may actually already be available to them. From there, the next step up is thinking about, is there a way that it's easier to view all of that information together? Is there a way that operators can share that trip information so we can all see what is available? Even if it's a case of a one-off trip going from Terrace to Prince George, is there a way to make that shown so that other people can board it? Same with water taxis, other forms of transportation. And then also next level up from there, is there a way that people can actually book their trips? That would be amazing. You can start easy. So I've put up some graphics. This is from Bus the North, which was a project with Northern Development Initiative Trust, BC Transit, Northern Health, to look at ways of making one-stop shopping so people could understand. Also on a lo-fi spectrum, here's some work that we did with Telqua to just consolidate their information and then be available at farmers markets to just spread the word for people that, hey, there's a lot of ways that you can get around and here's how to access it. My second wish would be for a coordinating frameworks. So like I said, priorities and showing what those priorities are by those different layers, that is huge. There's many different ways that you can collaborate on transportation, starting with communications and customer information, all the way up to sharing operations or sharing governance. The starting point to that is there a memorandum of understanding to work together, like we helped initiate between the First Nations Health Authority, the Northern Development Initiatives Trust, and Northern Health as a way to kind of start collaborating on their schedules and services together? Or are there other ways of doing it through communities or committees, or other entities that can take a lead in coordinating across larger geographic scales than we do right now? And then finally, but not less, is just sustainable and predictable funding. And with that suggestion around considering the different scales of investment. Right now, I feel like sometimes it feels like different forms of transportation are competing with each other when, as we said, they're all part of the same ecosystem and they all need to be there. So are there funding mechanisms or ways of prioritizing intercity and interregional services, another tier at regional and local services, and also making distinction between urban transit, but also rural, local grassroots initiatives, which can most definitely fill a role in terms of getting people to where they need to go at a very cost-effective way, and also building community capacity and economic development. And then finally, hopefully a way for transit funding to be more predictable, because you can't just pick out a bus, even a minibus off the shelf. It takes time to go through the process of ordering that, and also it takes time to build capacity to operate the services. And so for that, ideally there's funding that is predictable from year to year, so communities and larger regions can plan a path and move forward on making their transportation initiatives reality. I'm going to stop there and just see, Shilpa, anything else that you feel like I missed or you want to add?
No, Tanya, I think you've pretty much got it all right. Like at the end of the day, these are the 3 things that people should keep in mind as they think about transit and transportation systems in the communities. So I think we'll just wait for questions at this point.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
So if you want to stop sharing, Tanya, we'll do 5 minutes for questions, because Tanya and Shilpa have to leave at 6:30 for some other really important thing. If you have a question, please raise your hand in the yellow hand and we'll spot who's there. I'll get things going by saying if political elected officials from regional districts or councils wanted to have a forum to talk together about these things and make plans together, what would be the best way of doing that? Briefly, because we've got 2 more questions lined up already.
Well, 2 quick thoughts is I have wondered about the economic trusts. So the provincial government did some work previously on rural transportation, and that was a level that was able to facilitate that, whether that's something or not. It's a bit of a tricky one to make sure that you've got all the voices at the table.
Tanya, UBCM would be a good forum, because all the municipalities do meet there.
Yeah. But that's just once a year, right?
Yeah. And also it's wanting to make sure that Indigenous communities also are most definitely involved as well. So
let me, Kyla, do you have a question? And then Heather, and then Jerry, and then we'll probably have to stop it at that. Kyla, go ahead.
Hi, yeah. I have a very brief question about if you can speak to the inclusion of accessibility options for these planning systems, because we're left out often or completely sort of glossed over, and it's not meeting the needs of the people who need accessible access.
Right. And so for sure, and in my my super quick, and Shilpa will know, we actually do half-day and full-day courses all on transit planning. So accessibility is one of the cornerstones in terms of how transportation planning needs to be done. Just full stop. And so any project of merit definitely is taking that into account, right? Because so often it's those with accessibility needs that are left out in terms of other transportation options. And so most definitely that's at the forefront of public transportation.
And by default, if it's left out, it's not a project of merit.
Exactly. Yeah.
Heather Walkers, go ahead.
Just follow up on the accessibility part. It's usually, if it is considered, it's usually thought of as an afterthought. It's not looking at accessibility and inclusion as a holistic principle. And over and over again, people add it in at the end. The other thing they don't consider around accessibility is that they always think about a ramp. They don't think about the many types of disabilities people have and how to build that in. Like, how do you get access to a bus stop if you also have to take your white cane and go through 3 bike lanes to get there? I mean, how do you get from one end of my town, which is 1,200 people, to the other in the snow in a power chair to get to the one bus that comes here to Penticton and back again in a 3-hour run? So there's not just access, but there's all the pieces around how do you access it and what does that mean? And I think that's critically important. Thanks.
Did you want to answer, say, Tanya, anything?
Just amen.
Okay, amen. Let's go to Jerry.
Jerry, I'm a councillor up in Kitimat. For 3 years, I've been asking for rider statistics for our BC Transit buses. We have a plethora of buses that drive around empty mostly, and we have these big buses, and really looking at seeing how we can maximize the BC Transit service that we have. And we can't even get reader statistics out of BC Transit to say, well, this route is overprescribed and this is underprescribed. And I find that very much you get the service, and and I don't feel personally that as a council we have a lot of input on how that service is delivered. I've asked for smaller buses, and it's just, it kind of rolls down the communication channel and nothing happens. I don't know if are there other communities that experience the same difficulty with getting just basic rider statistics.
And I'm sorry, can you just repeat which community you were from?
From Kitimat in Northwest BC.
Okay. Yeah. I was the transit planner and scheduler for there for about 10 years. So good to see you. I would, for those of you with BC Transit systems, and I'm not sure if we have anyone from BC Transit on the call. I no longer work there. However, typically if you start with your government relations manager and ask that you would like a process, it's called a service transit future action plan. That would be the process by which you can request a review. Typically, what ideally is happening is that systems are reviewed on a periodic basis. Oftentimes it may be on a more, 2 to 3 years in a place like Kelowna or some areas of the province where they're changing rapidly. In other places where they're a little bit more stable in population, it might be closer to 5 years. So that would be the thing to start with and just approach it in collaboration with them. I feel like that would be my suggestion. And I'll also say that often if it is at the elected official level, that where those requests are made, then that also does carry weight.
And you said that's a transit feature action plan?
A transit future action plan
future.
or a service review. And Shilpa, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and say we have worked with communities that have BC Transit services. We have worked on behalf of those communities and are able to kind of coordinate with BC Transit because both Tanya and I have a history with BC Transit. For instance, we worked with Lake Country where they were looking to kind of change things up in their system. And were wanting that more immediate attention that BC Transit was unable to because of, they've got their priorities and things like that. And so we were able to kind of support them with their planning process for their system.
Cool. Right, for one more from Ali Grieve. If you want to go ahead, Ali.
Yeah. Okay. Hi. Thanks very much. Following up with what Jerry said, I'm an elected official for the Regional District Kootenay Boundary Rural Transit with BC Transit. We've been partnered with them for years and years. We have been telling them for years that the current model for rural BC doesn't work anymore. And to Jerry's question, we have entered into a review process. We haven't started it yet. It's kind of one of the services you can't really get out of, but a small community in the Beaver Valley where I live, communities of Fruitvale, Montrose, in the regional district I represent of 5,000 people, we're spending $37,000 a month for buses that we can never ride to work. We met with the Premier yesterday here in Fruitvale, and we again shared our frustration with the model that doesn't work in rural BC anymore. So we are pressing very hard for something very different for rural BC, and our story is not unique. We can't not do it, but what we're doing is too expensive and not working. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So I want to move on now. So thank you, Tanya and Shilpa. I know you have to leave us and disappear off to important things, right?
And unfortunately, I now need to go into the high school where I'm out of. But yeah, it's true. But if folks have questions, please feel free to contact us.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks so much.
So next, I want to invite on Raden Rossi, who is the Executive Director of Community Services in Castlegar. Over to you, Raden.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I'm calling in from Pass Creek, so just right outside of Castlegar there. That's where my house is. And I'm calling out of the Sinixt, Syilx, and Ktunaxa unceded territory region. So I was asked to speak about the need, and I will, but I'll just first give a little background. So Castlegar Community Services has been running a volunteer driver program for 20 years. It started way back in 2006, and it started just locally in Castlegar, and then it over 20 years has grown to deliver transportation through a pool of volunteer drivers all throughout the West Kootenays. So we will take somebody from Nelson to Revelstoke. We will take somebody from Nakusp to Kelowna, we will take all over Castlegar to trail. So a very common route is our area to trail. So that's the majority of our funding is focused around that. But we have all different funding models. I think we have 5 different funding streams flowing into this one program. We have seen the need significantly increase over the last 3 years. I can't speak to the program too much from the past because I just started with Castlegar Community Services in 2023. I have a feeling, and I think I know that the program just generally wasn't marketed or talked about very much, and we managed to kind of maintain need for a while. But I would say like 2023, 2024 needs significantly increased. We did a little bit of marketing for the program, and I don't know if that was it, but if I'm speaking to the need, our transportation coordinator, who's not even full-time, will come in after the weekend on Monday to over 50 messages, voicemails from people all over asking for rides across the region. And sorry, so our volunteer driver program is focused on medical. We also have medical reasons. So doctor's appointments, specialist appointments. We'll take people for surgeries in Kelowna, you name it. So medical focused. But we do have money coming through United Way BC that allows us to focus on some social aspects. So looking at social prescribing and the value of bringing seniors to social events and that holistic lens of healthcare. But primarily, the program is focused around medical drives. And yeah, the need has increased and it is completely unsustainable now. We've been voicing that, advocating that, going back to our funders and just being like we cannot maintain this. Like even the coordinator themselves, right? Like we've gone in and out of burnout because of the request and the need that comes in. And who's requesting? It's anybody that has a transportation barrier, right? So, I mean, we have people that are seniors, we have people that are adults. If I were to paint a picture, we have lots of senior clients who either have aged out of driving themselves, or their partner has now aged out of driving themselves, or their partner is still driving, and it's the weather, and they don't feel safe and secure in the cars themselves. And what's happening if we can't fill these rides? People are not making their medical appointments. And for me, I don't want it to sound the way it might sound, but I'm from Toronto. So when I came out here, it was just a huge culture shock for me to even just grasp the fact that people are not making medical appointments, and that downstream effect of not being able to do like a follow-up appointment after a surgery, or not being able to do that specialist that finally comes up. And it was so hard to grasp. I'm like, people actually literally aren't going. And then we see all that impact everywhere else, and it's so hard to measure. I think I have like 1 more minute.
Yep.
So some of the more exciting work that we've been doing recently is talking throughout the West Kootenay region with the other community service organizations who have local solutions, transit solutions that have been working for each other. But we're trying to come together. I really liked that graph that was put up on the screen about, all the different types of models. And then maybe on one side is the shared governance. Our organization and 4 other organizations throughout the West Kootenays are trying to come together and work better together so that we can link our transportation solutions together and do exactly like Watts Consulting was talking about, put it on a platform that can then be shared regionally. So whether we're going to try and work with somebody like Liftboard or Kootenay Car Share or something like that and build either apps, build out a platform where, for example, myself, just say I was a transit coordinator and I had a client that needs to go somewhere and they're contacting me from Nakusp. Well, I can go on this shared platform and get a volunteer driver that could only do a Nakusp to the Slocan Junction transit, I could book that ride, but then I could also book a secondary ride to take that person from the Slocan Junction to Trail. Because there's people that we're just not meeting the needs, and we're realizing that we have real solutions that are working right now for our rural populations. And if we just better work together, we could link together and, yeah, better serve our clients.
Thanks, Raiden. And when you get back to the chat, there's a question from Fernan Gutierrez. Can you share the funding streams that you receive to fund your program? If you put it in the chat, then everyone can see them, right?
Sure.
Thanks so much. I want to move on now to introduce Jeremy Valeriote. Jeremy is the Green Party MLA Sea to Sky. As well as being an MLA, he's a professional engineer with 20 years experience in environmental management, local government administration, and elected office. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you. Thanks, Guy, for inviting me. And I'm going to try and take 4 minutes to paint the picture, and then hope maybe if somebody has a burning question, there's hopefully time for that. So if you can keep me to that, Guy, I'll try and explain it as quickly as I can. Apologies, no slides, so I'll do what Guy affectionately calls the MLA ramble, which I noticed before I became one, and now I realize it's just a stream of consciousness of all the different things that we take on, and some of them we can't solve. But I'll draw the picture. If you were going to take a transit ride from downtown Vancouver across the Lions Gate Bridge through West Vancouver, across the upper levels, past Horseshoe Bay, through Lions Bay, through Squamish, through Whistler, through Pemberton, and to Mount Currie, which is in the Lilloit Nation. That would be the sort of extent of the system that we've been proposing. And it's a system that it kind of checks all the boxes: equity, economic development, climate, emissions, safety, congestion, and most of all, the top of the pile right now, affordability. It's a bit of a strange space, going off Tanya's slides, somewhere between regional and interregional, and somewhere between rural and semi-urban, I guess I would call it. So there is a perception perhaps that the Sea to Sky is very wealthy and has all the things we need. The promise did spend $700 million on upgrading the highway ahead of the Olympics, but that's sort of since Greyhound left in 2018, we've been essentially stuck. There is some private service. It's not an affordable commuter type price. There is somebody mentioned PopRide. There is a ride sharing app that works well in a pinch, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to everybody. And I'm not sure that it checks all the safety, and certainly doesn't check the affordability, or sorry, the accessibility requirements. But yeah, so somewhere between 20 and 150 kilometers is the total trip. I take Tanya's point that sometimes you have to focus on outcomes, not jump straight to solutions. But I think the work that's been done on this in the last 15 years, and more specifically since 2018, has been all the local governments in the corridor and the First Nations, the Lilloit and the Squamish and the Naquaqua First Nations getting together. And it's not rocket science, as I keep telling the minister. We're talking 10 buses, maybe a few more an hour a day up and down the highway. And so they've come up with, luckily all the local governments and First Nations are aligned in this, and they all know what they want. They've done a number of studies. There's really there's not as much requirement to prove demand in this case, because the population is quite high and growing, and we know from as was mentioned, people not making medical appointments, workers especially in hospitality, still a very working class part of the corridor, despite the wealthy tourists and the few wealthy homeowners. But people need to get to their jobs at odd hours. And so cobble all that together, and the local governments, really through the regional district, but also operating as independent councils and involving the First Nations, came up with a proposal to institute a motor fuel tax, a governance model that would work, that would allow the two First Nations to be involved. And actually, they thought they had this done in 2018 and walked out of the minister's office quite disappointed that the province didn't see it this way. And so, yes, there's a funding issue, especially in a deficit budget. But the government has increased transit funding, and they've been focused on perhaps Surrey SkyTrain. But I think there is at least the beginning of an understanding that it's a good investment in an investment that pays for itself. But we still haven't been able to quite get this across the line yet. And I think if, when we do, because it's a matter of, even the Premier and the Minister admit it's a matter of when, not if. But if we do, I think we're going to have to break through some precedents that maybe the province is quite comfortable with, that really the precedents that are really only broken in TransLink and in the Victoria model, where there's a fuel tax and a decreased reliance on property taxes. And I think I've unfortunately heard the comment that, oh, well, if we give it to you, then we'll have to give it to everyone, which makes me kind of wonder what's the problem here. I mean, all these communities that would do this if they were given the governance capability and trust to do so, and it will take different forms, of course. But
30 seconds.
Thank you. That's where we're at, and I'm hoping that this template could be used elsewhere. Where, after all, the corridor is roughly 50 or 60,000 people. It's not a huge population, and so I'm sure the Cowichan Valley and other similar areas fit into this category. We are quite linear, so it makes it a little bit simpler. But so that's where we're at. I was quite happy to have it written into an agreement with the NDP government in 2025, and we're still not quite there. There are a number of I don't know if it's delay tactics or excuses or actual genuine procedural and bureaucratic hurdles that need to be accomplished. But I think we've made the point that when all the local governments are aligned, that we can these things can get to the finish line and hopefully get over it. So I'm gonna stop there and just say, unfortunately I can't stay right until the question period. So if anybody has anything,
I was going to say, can you wait till the question? Is there someone got one burning question for Jeremy? 5.
Or I'm going to put my email into the chat.
Yeah, let people contact you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Jeremy, and taking the time.
Thank you.
Okay. So welcome back, everyone. Let me get this right. Yeah. Welcome back, everyone. I know that was short, but we're running short on time, and I want to try to keep honest to that finish by 7:30 thing. Next, I'd like to invite Chris Alemany from Port Alberni to share his personal experience. Chris is a media technician, social and community advocate, a previous municipal politician, and a climate transition leader. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Guy. Happy to be here. I got 5 minutes, right?
You got 5 minutes max.
5 minutes. All right. All good. All good. I'll just have to make sure I have my timing. No, that's great. What I just wanted to really share, Guy asked me to share kind of a personal story. So I'm going to share 2 things. I'll start with sort of my current and experience with the transit system, as someone who has had a career, 25-year career in the same place at Vancouver Island University. I commute from Port Alberni to VIU every day, and it's about 80 kilometers, right? And other places, especially the Lower Mainland or even in Victoria, there are commuting options. There's never been any kind of a commuting service that's viable between Port Alberni and VIU. The other portion of that is travel. Since there's no Greyhound service and there's only Island Link now on Vancouver Island. Getting around anywhere without a vehicle, there's often simply no option. And the main thing that has really crystallized this for me, just in the past 6 months, my wife came down with a condition where she has seizures, and she lost her ability to drive. just done in a matter of one visit to the emergency room, without the ability to know when that may come back. So for her, her mobility went from anywhere essentially to nowhere, because the transit system in Port Alberni is okay, but going across town is an hour journey. In a town of 15,000, it's very small in the grand scheme of cities. But that would take an hour at least, and then another hour back and doing whatever she does. And as far as going out of town, there is no service that she can realistically take now to leave, either for a medical appointment or for visiting family, or what she has in Victoria. There's simply no viable options, and that crystallizes it for me as a system that has no longer, it just doesn't have the ability to meet people's needs as it has in the past. So that's the story that I wanted to share. I'm sure it is not unique. We're middle-aged. I know this is something, medical accessibility is something often that is thought of as only, something that is lifelong, or that is only focused on seniors or the aged, but it can also happen suddenly. And then your transportation options change. So I really hope that this, Transit Alliance can try to address that.
That's great, Chris. We certainly hope that too. Thanks. So next I want to introduce Steve Earle from Gabriola to tell us about Gertie, the island bus. So for 40 years, Chris has worked as a geologist and developed and taught university-level courses in earth science and climate change. He's the author of an award-winning The Brief History of Earth's Climate and the widely used textbook on physical geology. He and his family live in a nearly net zero house on a small sustainable farm on Gabriola. Welcome, Steve. Where are you hiding? Calling Steve. I know he's with us, but where's
I am here, Guy.
There you go.
I have some slides. Will I be able to share those?
Yes, I just made you co-host. You should be able to do that. Yes.
I should see a share button here somewhere. What does it look like?
It looks like it's got a little arrow pointing upwards on it. And 5 minutes if you can keep it to that.
I do not see a little arrow.
Next to the raise the hand at the bottom, and then share, it says.
Oh, there it is. Got it. Share.
And then play from the start.
Am I sharing by any chance?
Not yet, no.
Okay. Share. Let's try that.
Getting there? Getting there.
Getting there now.
You now have your entire... There we go. Now if you do play from the start, it's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just gonna move this. Oh man, this takes forever. Come on.
Or just carry on because we can see them as they are.
If you can full screen it.
Let's go
there we go.
There we go.
So I want to talk about the Gertie bus on Gabriola. It's called Gabriola's Environmentally Responsible Trans Island Express. It's operated by the Community Bus Foundation, and it operates on the unceded territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. And this is what we looked like in 2014. It's very much a community thing. We tried to get BC Transit to come and operate on Gabriola, but they weren't interested. We tried to get RDN Transit, Nanaimo Transit, to come and help us out, and they weren't interested. So we just decided to go it alone. That's what we looked like in 2014. This is what we look like now. We're funded by property tax allocation that was approved by voters in 2016. We collect fares for riders over 18, but we get no money from the BC government for operations. We have been successful in getting grants, including a 2024 grant from the Rural Transit Solutions Fund, and also some money from BC to purchased 2 new electric buses, and you can see one of them there. That's the route. Those are the routes we use. We go, and I'll just show you the schedule really quickly, but we go to all parts of the island.
Sorry about the echo. I don't know where it's coming from.
I don't either.
Could be from you, Guy, if you mute, maybe.
I just muted myself.
Okay, try again. How's that?
That's
so
good.
We operate 2 hours in the morning, 5 hours in the middle of the day, and 3 hours in the afternoon. We don't operate on Sundays or on stat holidays, and we reduce our service over Christmas. We, back in 2012, 13, Chris is not muted. There, is that working? Somebody else is not muted. Okay, so we originally thought this would just be a commuter service. We would go to the village and the ferry. That's still a major focus of our operation, but ridership in the middle of the day is actually the biggest part of what we do. People going into town to do things. And it picks up dramatically in the summer when boaters come and anchor at Silva Bay, and also people come on the ferry as foot passengers. So we're very busy in the summer. Our initial goal was to reduce GHG emissions, and that's still a key focus of what we do, but we've discovered over the years that, in fact, we provide a really important social service. We're part of the social safety net here on Gabriola. We provide free bus passes to clients of the local social service agency. And people socialize on the bus. The drivers know all the regular riders. The other passengers know the regular riders. They know where they get on, where they get off. And when they're not there on a particular day, they start asking questions, and someone says, well, I'll see what's up. So it's a really critical part of social services here. One of our persistent problems has been maintenance. Up until this year or late last year, we've always used buses because we couldn't afford new ones. But we had frequent breakdowns, and a big part of our budget was spent on maintenance. So now we have 2 new electric buses, and they are more reliable now, and we hope they'll be much more reliable over the long term. So we have a part-time coordinator and 8 part-time drivers. Everything else is done by a board of volunteers. It's quite a lot of work for us, but it's very gratifying because the community loves its bus. Some things that we've learned over the last 13 years. It's an important social benefit. As I was saying, access to transportation is a basic human right, and everybody that's on it is part of that system. It's good for business. It brings people to Gabriola businesses that wouldn't otherwise be able to get there. For example, people coming into Silva Bay, before there was a bus, they could never get to the village to buy groceries or beer or whatever it is they need. And of course, it reduces carbon emissions, especially now that we're electric. We've learned, as I said, about breakdowns. That can make it expensive. There's quite a bit of red tape. Transportation Safety Board has a lot of regulations that we have to follow. One being that we cannot have stand-up passengers on the bus, which means we can only put as many people on the bus as there are seats, which is too bad, because sometimes we would like to get more on there. And that's about all I have to say. Thanks for riding along with us. You can find us at gertie.ca. And I will stop sharing. Whoops.
That's fabulous, Steve. Thanks so much.
Stop sharing. Have I stopped sharing?
Not yet, no. You'll get
that. Unshare. No. Oh, there it is. Stop share.
Okay.
Happy to take some questions if there's time.
Not time until later. Well, let's get through the presentations first and then see what we've got for questions because we're running 10 minutes late. So I want to introduce Keith Wiley. Keith is a core part of our Transit Alliance. He lives in Nelson, where he helped start the West Kootenay Transit Action. He's active in a variety of climate initiatives and hosts the weekly environment radio show, The Ecocentric on Kootenay Co-op Radio. Welcome, Keith. You've got 10 minutes to lay it all out for us.
I have to mute myself. And can you see my screen? Not yet. Here we go.
There we go. Yep. You're
good. My ferns in my backyard. And we'll go down to the next slide, please. I'm going to talk about a province-wide travel coach network. And this is something I've talked about before many times, and I probably will have to talk about again. It's been nearly 10 years since Greyhound left BC, and it's a huge and glaring gap in our transportation infrastructure, and the inconvenience, the cost, and actually the suffering of not being able to get around has been dramatic. And so it's an urgent need to be filled. Why a coach? Because intercity travel is for hours sometimes. It has to be reasonably comfortable with a washroom. It's not a transit bus, and that's why I call it a coach. And it's not a bus because when you say a bus, people think transit bus, but it has to be a coach line. They should be electric, would be ideal, but even diesel saves emissions and everything. And the need is urgent. Don't wait for an electric bus. Have a bus if you can, but that's why it's a travel coach. It's been much studied, actually, the gap, the need. Back in 2023, the province actually said, well, we'll talk about buses, which is their first step of doing anything is to talk for a few years about it before anything happens. And ask Jeremy Valerio. The three regional development groups had studies, and Watt Consulting was involved with them, and they all found pretty much the same thing, that there was a big problem, there was a big gap, and it caused high costs for people. There was low connectivity, low accessibility, and regional bus operations weren't very well served. Airports were well served. There's a lack of services. There's just a big problem, and that's not a surprise to us, and it's not a surprise to the government. But it's documented and it's there, and nobody can say they weren't told about it. Their own studies. The BC Assembly of First Nations came out with a report last year, and they said transportation is really important to First Nations peoples too. And one of the reasons is safety, because they found that Indigenous people in BC experienced transportation-related injuries nearly twice as much as other BC residents. That disparity exists, even though there's been a decline, a general decline. And I want to talk just very briefly about the Highway of Tears, because that's one place where the province has brought in, but it's a token skeletal bus service that runs twice a week. They had a First Nations conference on the BC North Bus in Prince George this year, and they found that people are still hitchhiking because the bus isn't frequent enough. And that's a common theme. If they say there's a bus, well, one bus does not cut it. A bus system is, as Tanya said, it has to be a system. You have to be able to get there and back at a reasonable time, in a reasonable time. As Chris said, getting across a small town in an hour and coming back in an hour, a 2-hour journey for what people in a car could do 15 minutes means nobody takes the bus. And that's what local politicians often say. When you talk to them, some of them, many of them are on board and say, of course, we need better transportation. We need better public transportation. But others are not so much. And they'll say, no one even takes the bus. And there's a reason for that. The reason is very simple. There's just no bus to take. or no bus to get back. You can get there. You can get there from here, or maybe you can't get there from here, but you can't get back. So don't let them tell you no one takes the bus and the bus is empty. It means the bus system needs to be improved and the frequency needs to be increased to reach the threshold where people will actually use it. The other main problem we'll hear about is how expensive it would be to replace Greyhound, and the province just backed away and said, let the private sector do it. In last year's budget, these new austerity days, which are unreasonable and unnecessary, they cut the transportation budget a bit, not a lot, but it should be growing, not shrinking. And the BC government cut it. And economist Alex Hemingway with BC Policy Solutions points out that we can afford as a province to spend more on government services. They will point out that we're a wealthy province with a poor government, and that our government has way less resources than it had 40 years ago. You might remember when we used to build museums and hospitals and schools and things like that with our public purse. But the years and years of tax cuts for the wealthy and for corporations mean our government is poor. And so we have to fix this. It's not something that we can just accept. When we look at what BC does spend, the biggest ticket item by far is healthcare, education, and transportation. This is on the operating side, but on the capital side, building things, highways and bridges and interchanges and tunnels trumps everything. It's in the next year, it's close to $5 billion in transportation. And over the next few years, it's multiple billions of dollars in developing. Some of that's transit, a lot of that is SkyTrain development and stuff in the Lower Mainland. But that points out as well that we have a real rural-urban disparity in our province. The Lower Mainland is fairly well served, can always be improved with transit. But I was talking to a woman from Taylor, BC, in our breakout group. I said, "What do you have for transit there?" She said, "Nothing, just nothing," and it hurts. And you talk to the grandmothers and the grandfathers who can't visit their grandchildren, don't drive anymore, are cut off from their family. It hurts. So we have to keep that in mind. We can talk numbers and we can talk budgets, but we have to realize that these things also hurt. The BC Federation of Labor commissioned a study from an economist, Mark Lee, from the Canadian Center for Policy Alternatives, and it came out in 2004. And he pointed out that British Columbians deserve to be able to get where they need to go quickly, conveniently, and affordably, no matter where in the province they live.
Just jumping in, Keith, I think that you had 2024, you meant, not 2004.
I did.
Carry on.
Thank you. I misspoke. Mark Lee says there's been years of neglect and privatization in transportation. And he says it's time for a whole new province-wide transit vision, uniting local and regional transit into an integrated whole. And part of that is an intercity coach service. It's a vital part of it. When Mark Lee looked at the Intercoach network, he found that just a small additional expense in the multi-billion-dollar budget that includes TransLink, ferries, and highways could build the system over 10 years. BC is spending over $9 billion on highways, and that's mostly on the capital side. On the transit side, over 10 years, $1 billion, or about $200 million a year is what Mark Lee estimated, and that's the best we have. It's still kind of rough, but would be to build a full public intercity coach network. They would save the province money too. I don't know if most people are aware, but many of our health authorities subsidize transit because they have problems getting people to medical appointments, as we've already heard. And health regions put money directly into it. Here, I know they do locally to our our transit. And the benefits from increased public transit are quite enormous as well. We'd have people could access employment more easily, travel more easily for employment. It would lower carbon emissions, and we'd have healthier British Columbians. So there's a lot of cost savings that could happen as well. BC spends about $700 per person on vehicle infrastructure, roads and highways and bridges principally. And for just a little over 100 per non-driver, we could build a full public coach network. That's according to Mark Lee's estimates. But almost a third of the people living in BC, if you count children, don't drive. There's older people who've aged out. There's people who can't afford a car. There's people who have different abilities. There's many reasons, but there's a large number of people who don't drive. And they pay taxes too, and their taxes help pay for the highways, but they don't benefit. So there's a question of justice here. Now, our provincial politicians are well aware of this problem. They've been told. Jeremy Valeriate pointed it out as well. They know that there is an issue with a huge gap in transportation. Being aware of it apparently doesn't mean having to act on it. Politics is very difficult, and we have to keep them informed. We have to keep it in their face. And a public network is possible and will save BC families money. We have to keep telling them this. And that's why we formed the BC Transit Alliance. And it's an important step for us. We need a strong provincial voice to be constant, and it's going to take a while to constantly raise this issue with the province. And we also have to be very strong locally, raising this issue locally. But our first goal for our first campaign is for an interregional connection, an intercity bus network or coach network. All politics is local. It's an old saying, but the reason for that is all voters are local, and politicians respond best when something's coming from their voters. And that's ultimately where they will find the motivation to maybe change priorities a bit and build an intercity bus service again, which has been absent since they should have done it right when Greyhound left. The NDP government should have stepped up right then and done it, but they did not. They said, we'll let the private system do it, and they're unable to. Private system will not fill all the gaps. It takes public system to fill all the gaps. But the Transit Alliance has to support local organization and local development. There are transit, as we found out around the province, there are many, many organizations and volunteers working on transportation issues. And where there's no service, desperation drives people to find a way, and they get volunteers and they get donations, and they make it work somehow some of the time. But as Raiden Rossi explained, they're not keeping up, and they don't keep up. We need a public backbone to our transportation system. So we have to keep working on that. And we can do local events, and it would be a good thing to have strong local events that we coordinate provincially for maximum impact. We can do things like we need a bus day, which we did one in Nelson, or you can do local elected politicians ride the bus day. Many politicians haven't ridden a bus in a long time, and we ride the bus day, or ride the bus together day, or different days to highlight the need and the number of people who are concerned. It's amazing when you put up a display table at a public place, and people start to talk to you about it. They all have their reasons why they want a better bus service. They want better transit, and they want, for among other things, a way to get to Vancouver without the car. Because once you get to Vancouver, a car is a liability. You have to park it. You have to find what you're going to do with it. And for those of us who live in less trafficked parts of BC, driving to Vancouver is a nightmare.
30 seconds.
I would
Keith,
love
30 seconds.
Okay, I'm going to wind up. Well, I'd love to drive to take a bus to Vancouver and just leave the car at home, and that would really help Vancouver. So ultimately, we have to make it an issue in every election. And we need our local politicians, local councillors and regional districts to be advocates as well. So we have to ask them and everybody running for office, what's your position on public transit? Do you support increasing public transit? What are you going to do about it? So we can do that. And we're in this for the long haul. Tanya mentioned this as well. Transit is a long game. And we have 4-year election windows in our political system where things get done. We need to think in those terms. So we're working towards the next election. We want to make transit and an intercoach system an issue that gets raised during the election and politicians have to respond to. It's the only way we can get to meet the needs of all those grandfathers and less able people who can't get around in BC.
There you go. Thanks, Keith.
There.
That's just great. I'm very conscious of time because people have got evening things happening. So I'm going to, if you can stop sharing, and we'll go to Marcia Naus, who lives in Sicamous in the Shuswap region. Marcia, we offered you 5 minutes or 3 minutes to share your story.
Hi.
There you are, Marcia. You go ahead.
The story is that Sicamous is a small community, and most of our population are seniors. In the summer, we're a tourist town and very, very busy. Salmon Arm's about 20 miles from here. Canoe's about 15. They have a bus. Enderby is going the opposite direction, and they're approximately 22 miles. They have a bus. Revelstoke's 45 miles, and they have a bus. So, we're kind of in the middle with no bus service. I have been on the bandwagon for about 30 years now, but the thing that's difficult here is it's hard to get anything to go. Like, the community wants it. I do a lot of volunteering with the seniors. They want it, but when you go to the town meetings, it's pretty much just no. They keep saying BC Transit says no, BC Transit says no. I don't know exactly if it was 30 years ago or 25 or whatever. I was told by BC Transit we could have a bus 2 days a week. And I feel even if we could have a bus 2 days a week, it would help the community. The roads here in the summer, because you have to take the Trans-Canada Highway, are very busy. And in the winter, very busy. I mean, I think probably last week or the week before, we've probably had 4 or 5 18-wheeler accidents closing the highway, people hitting the mountain. So I would just like somehow to get a bus here.
There you go. That's wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing, Marcia.
Okay, thanks.
So before we move to questions, I just want to fill you in on briefly on the progress that we're doing with the Alliance. If I can just do a quick screen share and get that organized. We're only 2 months old. So we have a website, transitalliancebc.ca. Someone can put that in the link, sure. We have a newsletter. We've just done 1 issue so far. You can find that subscribe thing on our newsletter, on our thing. And we have about 25 member organizations. I shan't read them out because of the time, but we're strong in member organizations. So I know that the demand is out there and the need is there. And so, yeah, the 3 things, I'll go back to sharing. I missed that slide. The 3 next steps we're after for ourselves is number 1, we're becoming a registered nonprofit society. And then we're going to develop our funding strategy. And then we need to develop our interconnected intercity bus campaign. We need a volunteer newsletter editor. We need help with campaign development, and we need help with administration. And I think we're going to need more webinars like this where we can learn from each other and dive into some of the details and specific local stuff. And we also need financial support. So because we don't have a bank account, yes, if you can go to the westcoastclimateaction.ca, I'll put this in the chat and use our button there. We will ensure that any funding given through WeCan will come over to the Transit Alliance. But yeah, we're new, we're just getting organized. So now let's open it up fully to questions. And I'm going to let John Cowan have the first 2 minutes because John's been saying, please, I want to say something. John, where are you hiding?
Thank you, Guy. Oh, I'm not hiding, but I'm right here. And I talk fast, so I'll talk very quickly. I have been advocating here in Penticton for the last 8 months to get an e-bus service that runs twice a day from Kelowna to Vancouver via Merritt to reroute one via Penticton. They didn't want to deal with it first till I went to the media. And as per what Keith said, you got to get the politicians involved locally. I've gone to 4 cities, Karamias, Penticton, Summerland, and Oliver to get them on board. I've got letters of support from them and really working hard on that. So yeah, that's very important to do that. And Marcia from Sicamous, I believe eBus runs daily now from Kamloops through Salmonar, making connection with the bus from Kamloops and Vancouver to Calgary every day. You do have a daily bus service, do you not?
They won't stop in Sicamous.
They don't stop in Sicamous. Thank you for that. I'll look into that. Okay, thank you. But I am working hard to get eBus for the Southern Okanagan, which has no long distance bus service since the demise of Greyhound. Thank you, Guy.
Thanks, John. We said, Marcia, do you want to quickly respond? No, you muted yourself. No matter. Go on.
Some lady actually last year got a bunch of people to sign to get the bus to stop here. They wouldn't stop.
What's the reason? They don't have a place to pull over safely?
They wouldn't say anything about it. They just wouldn't stop.
There you go.
Okay, well, maybe at some point, Guy, could you get Marcia's contact information? I'll deal with her on that.
Yes.
I'm a real pit bull. I've got the media involved. I'll do what I can to help you.
Okay, thanks, John.
And Marcia, if you put your email in the chat, John will see it directly. So Jeanette, Keith, you want to stay on the line so we're answering questions and stuff?
If I could just comment on John's point, it's a private company, needs to make money, and small stops aren't going to make them any money.
Yeah.
This is why we need a public coach system. But anyway, that's just a...
Well, yeah, in response to that, you're absolutely right. And many people said, yes, they're a private company. They don't have to do it. That is correct. But a lot of things can happen with public pressure. And my thing is to entice them to want to come and negotiate with our politicians.
Yeah.
Anything is possible. So
good on you. Don't quit.
Thanks, John. You keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Jeanette, go ahead with your
I think politically, and I heard someone say about, a one-day ride transit for MLAs, but I would go beyond that with the challenge, like we had once about living on welfare rates, to do your work. And I'm thinking in particular of our not quite local MLA, who I think is Minister of Transportation, to be able to do stuff in the interior and really understand how important it is. And especially so just now, we have problems in the city because everybody's moving to the city. But in BC, we have this huge BC. We want people to be able to enjoy and live in, but in order for them to live in communities now, we're not having more timber cutting and whatever. We're not having resource communities. We need communities that people can live in and access. And if it's tourism, we need to be able to get them to visit. So I think I really thank you for this presentation because it started a whole lot of ideas in my head. So
that's
thank
great,
you.
Jeanette. Thanks. KJ Hansen from the Okanagan, do you want to jump in?
Yes, absolutely there. Yeah, thank you for having me. And Jeanette, I love your comment there. I'm jumping right onto that. We're thinking the exact same thing. Yeah, like we of the Okanagan Transit Alliance, I put this in the chat also, are going to do a Transit Week challenge or put that together for our community, like at least in Kelowna, hopefully all for the Okanagan if we can. But I think it'll be really great if there's a way that we can coordinate this province-wide. Because like everything starts municipality, and if we get all of our city councils on board, the better chance that we can really get like transit to seriously improve.
Yeah. So we have a really good database. We did invite every rural regional director, mayor, and councillor in the whole province, and I know at least 40 registered, and there's quite a few attending. So, but getting that conversation to happen, I mean, and we're still just very small. We're all volunteers. We'd love to have someone who can go to UBCM and set up a table and talk and talk and talk. Maybe we'll look at you, KJ, to get you to UBCM for that, right? Keith, any response to KJ?
No, what a great idea. We should consider doing it provincially. You know, it's
Yeah.
yeah. There is an added, you get more for your buck in the media when you do a provincially coordinated event.
Yeah. I mean, I will just add that one of the founders for Okanagan or for the OTA is Kristen Pulse, who did this over in Ottawa, and they actually did see turnover from the municipal election believed to be from their transit challenge that they did over there years ago. So it has shown to work. So I think that would be like our best chance.
Cool. Jenna Brown, do you want to chime in?
Hi. So my family lives along Highway 16, so I think this is a really important initiative because, you know, I've seen firsthand how the disappearance of Greyhound has had an impact on the community. But I guess one of the things that I'm wondering is that how will, like, because I know this is all relatively new, but like how are we going to coordinate this with like local service? Because some of the challenge is not even just, you know, it's also getting to that bus stop too, because a lot of these smaller towns, like my grandma's town in Burns Lake, they don't even have bus within the town, like just to go around town. Like there's buses that do stop in town every few days, but like even getting to the stop for my grandmother, she's in her 80s, like she has to get a ride to first get to the for example, the BC Health bus, to then take a bus that goes to, you know, Prince George, stays overnight, and then to get to BC. And that's, you know, she's lucky enough to have that health bus. I know some communities don't even, in this chat, don't even have that. And I know like some communities really are even just desiring something like that. But at the same time, it's like for people who have disabilities or, you know, have mobility issues or older, even getting to the bus is a challenge. So I'm just curious if there's
we need a network of helping neighbor volunteers and people like that to sort, you know, to organize that sort of stuff. Keith, any thoughts to throw in on that one? Just
yeah, I would just like to ask, is the BC North bus helpful at all? Jenna?
From what I know, it's like that bus also runs sort of like on not a daily schedule too.
Yeah,
And
not at all.
sometimes it can be a bit challenging to book. Like it's like all these services, they're kind of like cobbled together in a way that like it's because it's not like on a frequent or like daily schedule, it's hard to rely on. Like my grandmother uses them, but it still doesn't mean that there's not challenges.
No, it's really inconvenient. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll go to Avril, then Bob, and then I want to ask John if there's been any questions in the chat coming up. Avril, go ahead.
Thanks very much, Guy. I just wanted to point out that I put into the chat a rather surprising resource for some of us here on this call, and that is the BC Chamber of Commerce report on transit. And I think you would be very interested in some of its findings. It's 2025. One of the recommendations they offer is a levy on persons ICBC insurance to fund public transit across the province. So, I mean, that is just kind of interesting. You don't expect it from the Chamber of Commerce all the time. I found it very valuable. I gave a presentation to provincial budget committee just at the beginning of June. And so there's lots of really interesting resources out there if you go digging. And I just thank everyone here so much. We need it desperately across the province.
Thank you. Thanks, Avril. Bob, do you want to go ahead? Bob Story.
Yeah, thanks, Guy. Yeah, just a little bit of an update on the Northern Health Bus. It covers all the way from Rupert to Prince George, down to Vancouver, and In between, there's all kinds of local services. They also have the BC Transit bus that comes from Burns Lake through to Prince George. And then I think if you look on the map in Fraser Lake here, we have Autumn Services that has 2 vans that take people into Prince George for medical appointments or shopping or whatever. What
Yeah.
probably we need in the north is somebody that can coordinate all of these services. They have the bus the north, and it hasn't taken off. And United Way has initially started community connectors, and originally they were supposed to help a person get, all their appointments, not just one at a time, but line up maybe 3 in the service area that you have to go to and then go to it. These are all services that I think can be expanded.
Yeah.
I know on the Northern Health bus, if it's not full and there's room, anybody can take the bus to Prince George or to Vancouver.
Yeah.
We have a lady in our town that goes to Vancouver quite regularly on the Northern Health bus. So,
Yeah.
it just needs to be expanded. And I think,
Yeah.
Keith, you mentioned it is that it has to be coordinated. I think
Yeah.
is the biggest thing.
Great. Thanks, Bob. John, were there any questions in the chat we should bring up and give a chance to add?
There were none to anybody that's still on the call. They were all to previous presenters.
Right.
There was one that from Carolyn Ronald that I would like to point out
Yeah, go
that
ahead.
maybe someone else can answer to. That is within regional districts, as in the local areas, can opt out. Within regional districts, local areas can opt out of the property tax for transit. So, Tanya, or whoever wants to answer, how do you get a transportation ecosystem if a keystone species is missing? The example she gave was that the whole part of Cowichan Valley Regional District has no transit tax because the ratepayers voted to withhold their taxes from it. In her words, nuts. Jeremy's statement that all transit systems should be on a provincial gas tax makes sense. So I guess the question here is, what does everybody else make of it?
I'll just give a personal response. In Area H of the CVRD where I live, which is the very north end, just below the regional district, we get a gas tax allocation, and it's came to around 400,000 a year. And often the regional directors did not know what to do with it. So they end up, laying asphalt on parking, on car parks and stuff like that, because there's no decent community discussion. In regional districts, you've got one director only, and often the communication with the people in the regional district is minimal. Donna McMahon from Sunshine Coast, I wonder if you wanted to chip in on this question of funding in regional districts. I know you didn't put your hand up, but I know you're on the call, Donna. Then we'll go to Ocean and Sam. Donna, you around?
Yeah, it's a challenge. The province pays roughly half of the freight, but running a transit system that is an urban model in a rural environment just doesn't work. It's crazy expensive. It's not flexible enough. Just basic things like for Handy Dart is designed for areas with like curbs and sidewalks. We don't have those. The bus stops in the middle of the road because there's no pullout, there's no curb, there's nothing. So a lot of people simply can't use the system.
Yeah, okay. Let's go to Ocean from Prince Rupert Regional District.
Hello, yes, North Coast Regional District. I'd like to point out a couple of things. My mom took it upon herself, it might be sort of mirrored, I guess, but an eastbound and a westbound transit option for our communities, including the Northern Health Bus, Via Rail, BC Bus North, and the Little Friendship House bus. And there'll be some days where there's a number of options stacked up, and then the next day where the only option is Northern Health. And one needs to book that 48 hours in advance. And if you don't have a medical reason to join, I myself as a 34-year-old person cannot get on the bus. And so Prince Rupert is the only commute or section between Prince Rupert and Prince George that is not connected through BC Transit with daily service. And so that's something that I'm really trying to fight for. The province has capped the port industries from paying a fair share of taxes. We're an impoverished community, an impoverished region, and yet they're limiting tax income, I guess, for the province, and also saying, well, no, you can't have any BC Transit service. There's no money for you. Our city a number of years ago denied it or rejected it because they were scared that people would go do their shopping in Terrace, British Columbia, 150 kilometers away. And now where we have a more regional hospital in Terrace, people need the daily service there and back. And yeah, I'm just very inspired to keep being a squeaky wheel. I know there's the Transport Action, there's other groups like this, and it's too bad that people are being so sort of spread out, I suppose. And I just hope to keep being a squeaky wheel. So thanks, you guys.
Keep at it, Ocean. That's just great. Sam on Denman, go ahead.
Well, I can speak to a couple of things that have just been spoken to. I have a number of hats, one of which is that I am the coordinator for the Denman Island bus service. But I'm also a local politician. I'm an Islands Trust trustee, and so I ride the bus almost every day because I'm driving it. But yeah, I want to speak briefly to talking about the transit tax, and it can be opted in and out of. So our bus service, and I wanted to just thank Steve Earle for coming and speaking, because Gertie was definitely a big asset to us when I was getting started building everything together, and Susan Yates down on Gabriel as a close friend and a trustee, but also been heavily involved with Gertie since the beginning. But so our bus service is funded entirely by our transportation tax across from the other CVRD, the Comox Valley Regional District. So yeah, 6-7 years ago, the CVRD started looking into trying to find ways to connect transportation across Denman Island, because we are the route across to Hornby Island. Hornby had started a bus funded by this already. And we sort of took up the mantle and became this sort of connector through, and it's so speaking very much to that sort of connecting across communities and between communities. But yeah, so we are funded entirely through that fund. Now it's not been without its struggles. It's not a whole bunch of money, but previously for us especially, that money was we were paying into it in our taxes, but it went to fund the bus in Courtenay and Comox. And was of no use to local people. And we had, a bus that came 3 or 4 times a day to the other side of the ferry. But if you live anywhere else on the island, you've got no way of getting there without a vehicle. So there's speaking to the power of that. And if you sort of, if you can point out that possibility, especially if you're in an area that's being underserved in that regard, then I think there is a potential to sort of levy that. Obviously, it helps to have an area director who's on site, and we're very lucky in Daniel Arbor as our local area director, and he has also been a really strong advocate for the fact that now the city buses do actually connect all the way down the east coast of Vancouver Island, which they haven't for ages. So there is finally once again a connection there. It does take a long time. It's a real milk run, but it is possible to make that connection if you've got.
That's great.
So yeah, it's possible to do, and they're out here. It's important to do it. We're very glad to be a part of this alliance as well. So
thanks, Sam. That's great. Let's go to Lisa. Where are you, Lisa?
Hi there. I'm Lisa. I'm one of the school board trustees for SD 48. And one thing, and I put it a little bit in the chat, and I'm not sure if Jeremy spoke to it for us, but we are. The school board receives $200,000 for busing across 150 kilometers of jurisdiction for our students. And we had said to Jeremy at one of our meetings with him, if the Ministry of Transportation actually funded, like, school boards can't be doing the transportation. It's not like we need to get our kids to and from school. but it's not our wheelhouse. It's a Ministry of Transportation function. And if they took that money and put it into a busing system, we're subsidizing with our bus, what we utilize for the corridor, we're subsidizing $1 million. And that's transportation dollars. That shouldn't be coming from Ministry of Education and Childcare. That should be coming from Ministry of Transportation.
Yeah.
So I'd love to help out. I used to be a counselor in Lions Bay. I got them the C12. I sat on all the committees trying to get that bus because they were paying $89,000 as a community to TransLink with no service.
Yeah.
So all the ministries actually have to start coming together and figuring out what path we're going to take, because all the communities can't keep subsidizing the transportation network. We can't get kids to and from after school activities. Kids get trapped, highway shut down. Anyway, so sorry, just wanted to introduce and plug. School boards are here for you too.
This is great, Lisa. So it's we got so many inputs coming in now and so many loose ends that need tying together. It's 7:45, so I'm going to ask Keith, do you want to reply to Lisa and wrap up the evening as well for us?
Okay, yeah, it is time. It is time to wrap up. Lisa, that's really interesting, and we've talked about that. Healthcare and health regions put in millions of dollars into transportation budgets as well. And that comes out of our health dollars. Same thing. We need a real functioning transportation system in BC that provides transportation across all those sectors and with expert transportation. It's been neglected for years. That's why we're here. So
thanks. Hang on a sec before you wrap up. Tara wanted to chip in something.
Yeah, just really quickly, Lisa, before we lose you, are school board trustees allowed to join the board of anything?
I don't know. I've tried to, the political advocacy is very interesting with the school board. I'm one of those see it, fix it, help with it, and trying to get into other committees. It was easier when I was a counselor. We could sit on, any municipal councillor could sit on any committee that they were appointed to from their board. But the school board seems to have, and the Ministry of Ed seems to have a different perspective on what you can sit on, which is really unfortunate because you get a lot of brain power that are running $92 million budgets and see those different analyses of where cost savings can occur. And I don't know the answer to your question.
We'll find out.
Okay.
So we had well over 100 people here tonight. This isn't going to be our last webinar for sure. We appreciate everybody coming, and join the Public Transit Alliance of BC, and we're going to keep doing this work going forward. You'll hear from us. Sign up for our newsletter, and you'll hear from us. Not every day. We're all volunteer run, but when we get a chance. So thanks everybody for coming.